for his music for the album Damn is performed.
Welcome. What's up, nigga? Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, like and subscribe. If you've been here already, you know what the fuck is up, nigga. You better like that shit. You better comment and fucking you better press that bell button, nigga, before I beat the fuck out you, nigga. So today, it's gonna be episode 1 of Hood Historian. I just like history. I'm gonna put my 2 cents on it. I like out of World War II history and just history overall with war history. So today is gonna be why Japan surrendered. I'm just gonna play the video. I'm gonna try not to stop too much in places that I feel like you guys know stuff, but I'm just gonna add my 2 cents here and there. I hope you guys like the video. Let's just get into it right away. I'm gonna have to backtrack real quick. And okay, let's get started.
Enthusiast, war criminal, and person in the wrong place at the wrong time, ordered to carry out the disastrous charge that would forever have his name attached to it at Gettysburg. Post-war, there was a fascination in the U.S. over the defeat there, and the U.S. over the defeat there.
Why is this nigga talking about Civil War?
And, as you can imagine, Pickett was often asked what he thought was the cause of this huge defeat. But whenever asked, his reply was always the same. I think the Yankees had something to do with it.
Okay. I'm confused right now, guys.
Let's talk about Japan.
Okay, here we go.
So if you know one thing about the Japanese in World War II, it's their reputation to not give up. From the individual, to the unit, to the government, holding out...
I'm gonna stop real quick. Fuck the Yankees, fuck the Giants, fuck the Jets, fuck the Mets, fuck the Rangers, fuck every team in New York, fuck New York overall. Pretty shitty place to live at. I'm gonna let y'all know right now.
Preferring death to giving up. So it's kind of weird they gave up, right? Like, really, you could make an argument Germany held out longer and more in line with the stereotypical Japanese warrior spirit than Japan itself did.
I mean, that's a good point. Germany did hold on to the last man, pretty much. They got fucked, bro. On some real nigga shit, them boys got fucked. But you could say, you know what I'm saying, they got fucked because they waited until the last minute to try to sue for peace. Japan got a way better deal. Japan did way better. There was no West Japan, like there was West Germany and all that. So, yeah.
Even got like a semi-conditional surrender and peacefully welcomed an occupation. Whereas Germany... So how did that happen? And that question, for some reason, has become this huge point of debate recently. Well, more like a year ago, but this is when I'm getting to it. And it's very dumb because it's turned into this monocausal debate of the true cause of Japan's surrender. But yeah.
I have been had conversations like that. People want to pretty much say that I'm pretty sure he's gonna talk about it. I haven't seen the video completely, but I'm pretty sure people just like talking, saying that the U.S. didn't really have to drop the bombs in Japan, and the bombs didn't really make Japan surrender, and all this. I feel like, in my personal opinion, I feel like the invasion of Manchuria by the Russians and the bomb both have an effect on it. You don't have to be one or the other. History's not black and white. I feel like two things can be true at once. I feel like they got bombed. They were like, what the fuck? And then they saw the Russians coming and they were like, what the fuck? I'm pretty sure the news from Germany and the other places that the Russians have been at already came back to them. Were like, yeah, guys, let's call it quits. We are getting the first atomic bomb ever dropped on us, and we got the Russians after us. They just call it quits. And I feel like it's two things that happen. I feel like it's fine to say that. I feel like it's fine to say that they saw no end to it. It's fine to say that they saw the end near and they took a smart way, not like the Germans that fought to the last man, and look what happened to them. They got graped to death by the Russians. Graped. You know what I mean?
So there are two arguments. Most people believe that it was the dropping of the 2 atomic bombs that scared Japan into surrendering.
Pretty much.
That is this camp's be-all end-all point, given that on August 6th, one was dropped, showing Japan that the US had the capability, with the second dropped on the 9th, confirming that it wasn't some kind of one-off thing, and inferring that it could literally be done until there was no one left. Or they gave up. You know, simple cause and effect.
Bomb was finally released.
And history is not just cause and effect. History is not just, again, black and white. I feel like history is just a compilation of things coming together to form one event. And it's fine to say that the bomb and the Russians coming both affected on the decision of the Japanese government and the Japanese emperor to just quit, to be honest.
Exactly at the designated hour, and the explosion occurred as planned.
The other big
You could see the pain in that man's eyes. You could see the pain of somebody that just know that he killed 100,000 civilians. People that had nothing to do with it, just normal average Joes that just got disappeared, dismantled from the earth. The whole city was gone, you know? So I know we're here for jokes and all that. We do got to keep that in mind, you know? That this is real people's life that were lost out here.
one is that Soviet intervention caused Japan's surrender. The story from that point of view goes, a bomb is dropped August 6th, Japan doesn't respond and doesn't care, but on August 9th, the Red Army invades Manchuria, and then the Japanese surrender, and they just kind of ignore the other bomb. Now, I'm gonna let you in on a secret.
I mean, if I had to choose, if you gave me the opportunity to choose between, okay, do you want to get disappear from this earth by an atomic bomb, or do you want to get raped to death by the Russians or worked to death by the Russians? I'm gonna pick the easy way out, guys. I'm gonna pick the easy way out, which is the atomic bomb. I would hate to see the Russians coming. I would hate to see a Russian flag a mile away from my house or from me. That would be a nightmare scenario. These guys are serial rapists. Now, let's not sit here and say that the Japanese were not serial rapists and committed great, horrible things to these other Asian nations, Korea specifically, and the other ones. They were horrible. But we also got to, you know what I'm saying? It's not a one-way street. And to add to that, I'm pretty sure they don't even teach this in Japan about the horrible things that they did and all these things, which is kind of weird, man. I never understood that. When countries do stuff like that, it's not really a shame thing. It should be just a learning thing. Like, let's never do that again. That's what we gotta learn there, you know? And just sidetrack, I'm gonna be talking a lot of shit about Japan through the video, to be honest. Not like in a bad way, just in a historical way. But I just want to say, I went to Japan about a year ago. I went to Tokyo. Best city ever. The people, the Japanese people, are the most respectful people I ever been around. They made me feel like a human being coming from America, you know, respectful, helpful, the nicest people ever. People were stopping me on the street and asking me if I needed help with anything. It was that nice. Amazing people. The only bad thing that was that I did get stopped, people taking pictures, but I don't blame the locals, people that are from Tokyo. I feel like it was mainly all the tourists from all the places that were acting like this. But even then, it was not like in a malicious manner or in a bad manner. It was really, you know, just curious, you could say. But yeah, if I travel a lot, I travel all through Asia, Europe, and South America a lot. The only place I will move to, apart from where I'm living now in the US, the only place I will move to is Tokyo. That city and the people there are amazing. I've never been treated so good and being so respected. It was an amazing experience. So I just want to say that before we continue with this video. I don't want people to think I'm like hating or like throwing salt. I respect the Japanese people. I respect the culture. They've been nothing but amazing and good to me. So it'd be kind of wrong for me to just sit here and talk shit without saying this first, guys. So let's keep going with the video.
Both these takes are dumb. Seriously, whenever people discuss the surrender of Japan and make their case, it always involves the most flagrant use of cherry picking I have ever seen.
This is what exactly, like, people like to cherry pick stuff like this. I'm like, bro, what about, you know, you expand your mind? Two things could be true at once. I'm gonna keep saying this throughout the video. I'm sorry, but like, two things could be true at once. You know, You don't have to pick and choose. You don't have to apply your little 21st century mind to it. You got to expand your mind, man. This A lot of people were dying during this time. People were scared. People were making decisions scared. So you got to put that in there too. It's not people were not just, oh yeah, we're gonna kill hello civilians for the fun of it. That's not how things work. The Japanese were serial rapists, serial.
and ignoring certain facts. And I'm not even including all the counterfactuals when you expand the conversation to the morality of all of it, which to be extremely
Yes, I gotta make this video immediately. I gotta say this before we even go forward in this video. This video is not the morality of dropping the bomb. Nothing about that. It's not a black and white conversation. People be like, it's wrong, it's not wrong. Like, you gotta understand the time period and what was happening. So let's keep going.
clear is not what this video is about. This is a whole different conversation.
Side question. I'm sorry, I can stop the video. Side question. Why are there no garbage cans in Tokyo? Again, best city I've ever been in my life. Best people ever. But can somebody comment why there are no trash cans in Tokyo? I was legit curious. I had to walk around with my bug bag, put my trash in there, which I'm not mad about. It wasn't like, it didn't ruin my day. It didn't ruin my experience of Tokyo at all. But why are there no trash cans in Tokyo? The cleanest city ever, by the way. Cleanest city. I mean, you could eat on the floor. Amazing. Why are there no trash cans in Tokyo? Question.
And we are just talking about what got Japan to quit. I'm not going into that. I mean, maybe one day if you ask nice enough. Now, for all of this to become super clear, all you need is a timeline of events and to work out how they interact with each other, while not leaving any of them out. By mid-1945, everybody in Japan knew how bad the situation was. Absolutely no one held out any hope for what could be called a victory in the traditional sense of the word. There are no Steiner's counterattacks here. This is Japan in 1945. You are going to die. One thing often missed when talking about this was, at this point, that kind of victory wasn't the goal. The goal was really, at this point, just a negotiated peace to avoid utter defeat. And their plan for this was called Ketsugo. The general idea for it was to bleed the Americans until they gave up. Now, this is not far off from what the Japanese had hoped to do.
And it was a good idea. Let's not sit here and be like that we're just wasting life. It was a good idea, to be honest, because look, like 20 years later in Korea and 20 years later or in Vietnam also, like, it worked. It's hard to beat a country like America with the amount of people and resources that is here, that we have here. So you got to attack the people, and it's worked before. People are not going to die for no reason. People are not going to die for some random politician that's trying to get glory and love and stuff. That's not how things work. That's not how it happened. So the Japanese had a good plan, you could say. Dangerous, horrible, a lot of kids, because there were kids fighting. 17, 18, 19-year-old, most of the kids, will die technically. But at least it was a good plan. It wasn't like the Germans at the end of the war trying to still have offensive things, like offensive movements and having gold brigades and stuff, thinking that it was still win the war. Mind you, at some point Hitler did finally, I don't think I can say his name. I think I might get blocked. At some point, he noticed, okay, I can't win this war, and he tried to do some offensive things to pretty much cause a deal on the table. Like, hey, you guys are getting fucked. I know you guys are winning, but you guys are getting fucked also. I need y'all niggas to fucking, come to the table and settle down, which didn't work. Because they just kept fighting to the last man, and we know what happened there. West Germany happened. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to say that they did have a good plan, I guess,
Pretty much the entire war.
I didn't think that they were counting on the atomic bomb being made.
Always realistic about the fact that as long as morale held, they were going to get trounced by the United States. But what began as a hope for an anti-war sentiment after Pearl Harbor was now taking its final form here at the end, with now trying to take as many Americans with them as possible and hope there's some Japan.
That's where they backfire on. In America, if you can get the people against the war, it's probably going to get stopped. Even if it takes 20 years, like Afghanistan and Iraq and all that, but it's going to get stopped because people are going to be tired of dying for no reason. But if the people don't like you, the people feel like it's a war against them as specifically, ooh, brother, it's not a good mix. gonna say right now, it's not a good it's not a good idea to try to go to war with people that when America have a moral stance on it, you know, try to say like it's one thing if you go to war for no reason, but if there's a moral stance behind it, I feel bad for anybody that's against it.
Japan left by the time they give up. And this plan was going to be enacted during the American invasion of Japan.
And by the way, I know, we're talking about this, but I just want to say, they're all veterans. Everybody was dying for the nation. Everybody was fighting for freedom. Everybody was fighting for something bigger than them. So we still got to be respectful of everybody. Doesn't matter if it's the Axis. I gotta say it like this because I don't want to get my video banned. But if it's that or if it's the Japanese or the Australians, the Americans, we gotta be really respectful. People gave their life, people died, people lost fathers, sons, and everything. Like on some real nigga shit, like you gotta be respectful with it. You can't just sit here and point a finger at somebody for no reason. You know what I'm saying? So we really gotta do that shit like that. So let's keep going.
They knew was coming. These policies were enacted by a council called the Big Six, made up of 4 Navy, 2 Army, and 1 civilian member that had to agree unanimously on all decisions for the nation. And they were very, very united in this policy. All of this is to say that Japan wasn't just preparing for an invasion, they were hoping for it. It was the goal. They wanted the Americans to come to them and make Okinawa look like a joke, so that those weak-willed Americans would leave them alone. And Japan, although technically defeated in pretty much all its war aims, would still keep its institutions, government, and not be occupied. And until August of 1945, to the Japanese, it looked like that was going to pretty much have to play itself out. But then in the course of less than a week, all of that changed. On August...
I feel like, and I have the same feeling with Germany. They would have taken some and then chill, and then like 4 years later, try to take some again, and you know what I'm saying? Or at least have a better, because the same issue that Germany had, Japan had, resources. And more specifically, oil. Oil is the reason why Japan was struggling. Oil is the reason why Germany ended up struggling. They couldn't feed their soldiers. They couldn't feed their machines. And that's what happened, So the greediness of the upper 1% or upper 0.1% of the population is what caused all of this death. People cannot just have one. They wanted to have 10 cookies,
6, 1945, Little Boy was dropped on Hiroshima and destroyed it. But surprisingly, for being the first people to have the literal power of the sun harnessed against them, the Japanese...
The little power of the sun against them. And they were like, nigga, do whatever the fuck you want to do, nigga. I'm about it. That's some big balls for them Japanese, bro. Big balls on them.
Response was actually pretty muted. The Big Six and the government were not really impressed at all. Japan had a nuclear program during World War II. Although it wasn't successful, it gave them a really good idea of how Herculean a task it was to create one of these things. And so for those who actually believed it was a nuclear device, they figured there was no way there could be more than one. The Army and Navy's opinions were even more extreme, with the Army flat out denying that it was a nuclear weapon, demanding more evidence, and the Navy essentially saying, "That's neat. Do it 5 more times and I might be scared." And as far as official responses from the Japanese government, there was nothing. Fast forward to 3 days later, the Red Army invades Manchuria with fantastic success, essentially rolling over the Kwangtung Army and its allies. As you can imagine, this was not ideal. Japan had been doing everything it could to not provoke the Soviet Union this entire war after 1939. And people in the Japanese government had actually been...
That's funny, because the reason that they attacked America, in my personal opinion, is because they thought the same thing was gonna happen that happened with Russia. They did one big old battle, beat the fuck out them, especially their Navy. And they were like, and Russia didn't have an answer, and they pretty much just like sued for peace or pretty much lost. Because it's a loss on the record books. Japan won that war, So I feel like they thought the same thing was gonna happen with America, but America was like, America pretty much got punched in the face. But say, all right, nigga, watch what I'm gonna do. Start beating the fuck out of Japan to a pulp. The Russians got punched in the face, and they were like, all right, bro, I want to fight for real. American was different.
Really hoping that the USSR might be convinced to mediate peace talks between they and the US. Peace talks with terms the US would never accept, but nonetheless. But although they were now fighting large country number 4 at this point, there was still no move to act.
That's something that I never understood. The Axis has so many enemies. Like, there was no way they could have won. No way they could have won. So many enemies. I feel like if they would have concentrated on one or on a couple at least enemies as a whole, like Germany, Italy, and Japan, and the other smaller Axis powers, if they would have concentrated on some of them, it would have been better. But they were fighting too many people. Half the world was literally against them. Maybe now we boost on the ground against them, but what the war was about, resources. All the countries were helping with resources also that were against them. So I feel like that's one of the big reasons that they couldn't. There was no way they could have won the war. It might have taken longer to win the war, but there was no way that they could have won the war, to be honest. It was technically a resource war, a manufactured war. Now, who can put out more tanks? Who can put out more planes? Who has the oil? Who has the food? And Japan and Germany didn't. Japan from the beginning didn't, and Germany after like around 1941, 1942, Germany knew already. We don't have the oil to keep this war going. We got to make some big ass plans. Something's got to go our way. I'm sorry, I be talking about Germany bringing this in. I know it's about Japan, but during World War II, it's hard to talk about one without the other because there's a lot of similarities between them, to be honest, and a lot of differences. But something they have the same is that they were both grapers, serial grapers, Russia included. I'm not forgetting about Russia.
Action from the government. Upon hearing the news, Army Chief of Staff this guy.
I think I mentioned it earlier, but do they teach this in Japan? If anybody that's from Japan or knows about this, knows this, can you might comment? Because I heard from birds around the way that Japan is really weird about it and don't really teach the real history. How much knowledge do the average Japanese person has towards World War II, specifically all the crazy stuff that they did, all the grapes, all the killings, all the massacres? I'm just really curious about that.
Guy pretty much dismissed it out of hand, saying that, yes, this is an unwelcome development, but this does not invalidate Ketsugo, essentially saying, hey, if the Soviets want to land too, it's all killing allies to me. Then, no kidding, about 10 hours after the Soviet invasion begins, another bomb is dropped on Nagasaki, destroying it. But even then still, on the 9th, the Big Six cannot come to a unanimous decision for what to do. It takes until the next day, August 10th, that an imperial conference is called and Hirohito makes the decision to surrender, breaking a 3-3 tie on what to do. Now this is normally where the retelling ends, but this leaves the situation far from sorted, as maybe the government decided to surrender, but what about the army? In fact, this whole war started because the army wasn't listening to the government in 19...
That's crazy, man. This whole thing pretty much started because a group of people, right? A group, like maybe like one brigade or one company of the army, well, like, you know what, man, fuck what y'all talking about. We taking over Manchuria. We taking over this shit. Or we gonna buy, we were fighting the Chinese army, yeah. And then they beat the Russians too. Like, it's crazy how not one single event, but like one event could really change everything. A group of people could change anything. That's what people say, like, change is hard. Change is not hard if you got the balls for it. You know what I'm saying? Things could change in a matter of minutes. History could change forever, Like, this little thing, which the people that probably did that, we will never really remember. We will never really recognize. They did that shit. It's like the guy in Germany, in Austria, that fucking shot the guy and started World War I. You know what I'm saying? Like, just crazy.
33. There's absolutely no guarantee that they're going to go along with this. In fact, right after the decision, General Kawabe's deputy chief of staff was asked by another senior general, what if the officers don't follow the order? To which he said without hesitation in his diary, yeah, a lot of them probably won't. And after that, just like he predicted, 2 of the 3 Japanese area army commanders, one in China and one in Southeast Asia, declared that they would not stop fighting. On top of this, there was...
I wonder what was going through their mind. Like, we're not gonna stop fighting. Like, if you don't have the thing from the home center, I know Japan army was really self-sufficient in the sense of like they would take advantage of the surroundings. But like, I don't understand what's going through people's head. at that point, I imagine you've done so much damage as a general or as a leader. That you're like, man, I gotta go all out because at this point, I'm not gonna go to jail for no reason. I'm not gonna go and get killed for no reason. You know.
Was actually a coup by a bunch of middle-ranking officers to steal the surrender declaration recording Hirohito made, and probably to kill pro-peace government figures and possibly even try to take control of the emperor himself.
Jesus.
Now, the whole thing was horribly planned and had no chance of success, but it goes to show that the government saying, "we give up," is not the end of the story. Skipping ahead, on August
Didn't one of those guys like I mean many guys fought like 10, 20 years after the war was over? They just kept fighting. That's that has to be studied. The dedication and the love that they have for the nation is something that is once in a lifetime, pretty much. So again, we're talking shit, we're laughing and talking about it, but you still got to show respect to these people that gave their life to that, you know, on some real nigga shit, like for real. For real.
15th, Hirohito's surrender declaration is played to the Japanese people. Now, it mentions only the atomic bombings and not the invasion of Manchuria by the Soviet Union. This has been used by those who argue the bombs solely ended the war as evidence for the fact that the Soviet Union played no part. But it makes sense why he would only mention this to the Japanese people, who both had a frame of reference for it and were being affected by it. The Soviet invasion of Manchuria would have meant nothing to them, and would not have made any sense as a reason to surrender, being something that was far off on the mainland. The opposite was the case everywhere else, though. Although Japan had officially surrendered, the army just flat out refused to stop fighting the Soviets in many sectors. This, as you can imagine, would be a political nightmare, and could only go on for so long until your enemy.
Yeah, they couldn't really like. I don't think they understood what's going on. Like telling somebody that's fighting overseas, like, "Hey guys, we just got bombed. We gotta stop fighting." They're probably like, "Bro, we get bombed every day. What are you talking about? Y'all better keep fighting." I understand that part of it, but even then, it's kind of crazy.
Enemies just no longer believe that you're actually trying to surrender and start thinking that this was probably just some trick to buy time. So on August 17th, a shorter speech by Hirohito was given to call the military itself to surrender. And although the tone of both speeches are very similar, the call to action is over the Soviet intervention, with the bombs not being mentioned at all. But this also makes a
Okay, I didn't know that. So that makes way more sense, right? The first big speech was pretty much about the bombs because it was for the people, and the second big speech was for the people that went there. So that makes sense, you know. And it just proves that it's not one or the other. Like I know people like saying, like just bringing up the Russians just to pretty much say that the U.S. didn't really have to drop the bomb there, which I feel like they did in the sense of like what was gonna happen, you know? These people, if you put your money in it, these people were dying by the thousands. I'm talking about like Americans. They didn't want to go do that. They knew it was gonna be a hard battle. Like every battle that they had was hard. You watch videos of like the Marines and they praised the Japanese how hard they fought. So I feel like you can't say the Russians doing this uh is a reason for the war, or the bomb doing this is a reason for the war to end, or if the Russians did it, the U.S. shouldn't have done that. Like you know, it's cool and fun to be in the moral standing now and be like, hey, they didn't have to do that. But like at that time, you know, think about it. Like your people are tired. It's been for years now. This war's been going on for years, and it's not just affecting people by dying. People are not getting the resources that they need on their everyday life because they're sacrificing that for the war. And I feel like you will need to do something, or your people are gonna get tired eventually of dying for nothing. Even though the war, they were super pro the war when it first started. By that time, it was getting iffy, you know. So I'm not saying it's an excuse to drop an atomic bomb. It's not an excuse to drop an atomic bomb. But to say that they didn't have to, or like they did it overkill, it's also wrong. We can't sit here and say that. I'm not proposing to drop atomic bombs to anybody. I'm not proud that happened. I'm not going for it. Like, oh yeah, they should have done it. Like, if I said that before, I didn't mean it like that. But like, I'm saying, like, I feel like at the end of the day, we should put ourselves in their shoes and what's going on at that time. it happened. It was crazy, but I feel like we should take into consideration everything that was going on at that time. You know, there are millions of people that would have died on both sides, not only on the American side, as well as on the side of the Japanese people. They were gonna do a total war. They were gonna do worse than what Germany did. You know, having the old people and the kids fight. They were gonna do. Everybody was gonna have to fight, and they didn't have even the resources. Just like Germany, they didn't have the resources to even arm these people. They were gonna tell them to go out there with sticks. You know what I'm trying to say? Like that was gonna be a lot of people lost, man. A lot.
A lot of sense because it is directed at people who aren't in Japan and are bearing the brunt of fighting all these enemies abroad. To the individual commanders, hearing about Hiroshima and Nagasaki would have been an incredible non-issue given two things. One, cities have been destroyed before. This was another firebombing of Tokyo by a different name. They had to be thinking, we were fine with that when it happened, how was this any different? And they also have no concept of what an atomic bomb even is, so the magnitude of the event was just lost on them. And two, Japan had already decided to fight this thing out till the end and rule over what was left. Since they were doing exactly that in the occupied territories, they 100% expected people to be doing that on the home islands. Mentioning the Soviet invasion implied that they couldn't really bleed the enemy to a stalemate anymore with a whole nother country arrayed against them. That
Again, this was a resource war. So once you're already ready to lose, right? And the plan was we gonna bleed them dry and fuck the morale up. And now you have a country with infinite amount of people, infinite amount of resources, infinite amount of tanks and planes. Like at this point, the plan that you had wasn't even gonna work. So surrendering was the best thing. It was way smarter than Germany. Germany really thought they could do something or sue for peace, and they ended up feeling the wrath of the Soviet Union. They ended up feeling the the mass grapes, the mass killing, the massacres of the Soviet Union. And I feel the Japanese people did the right thing, and they didn't put their people through that, their civilian population through that.
kind of line of thinking utterly invalidates Ketsugo.
I bet the civilian population that was not in Nagasaki or Hiroshima were happy that they were not gonna put themselves through that. To be honest,
And was really the only thing that
rest in peace, everybody from Nagasaki and Hiroshima. There were also warriors. These people didn't deserve to die. Those people were just civilians, pawns in the game of this ultra elite, ultra powerful people in that country. Same way how a bunch of Americans died for the same thing, Germans and all those people. Is just the nature of it, and we gotta show respect to those people.
would convince them to lay down their arms. Basically, at this point, there's so much against us, this stalemate, or this forcing the enemy to give up, just isn't possible anymore. You really see all of this play out post-war in memoirs for both points of view. Generals abroad always say the surrender came from the Soviet intervention. Governmental figures, and those on the home islands, will say it was the bombs. And that gets to my point. There's no singular reason for Japan's
Exactly. That makes sense. Even though you do gotta take stuff that they say with a grain of salt, because this is post-war stuff, but that makes sense. You know, the people that were in the ground were like more worried about the ground stuff, aka the Russians. The people that were at home were worried about at home stuff. So like, if you tell the people at home, hey, we're giving up because of the Russians, they're gonna be like, what the fuck? What's going on? But if you tell them, hey, we're giving up because the United States is dropping the power of the sun on us, they will be like more willing to do that. But the people that are away, you know what I'm saying? It's a different but. So I'm glad that it was mentioned that he did both speeches, which I didn't know, to be honest. I didn't know about the second speech. So that makes way more sense on how everything ended up just happening and rolling.
surrender. In the course of 3 days, just 3 days, things went from a terrible situation with basically a national suicide pact to the sky falling, both figuratively and literally, depending on where you were. And even after
Jesus
that,
Christ.
there were still significant holdouts. History is the study of cause and effect, but I think that people often want to make that a lot cleaner than it actually is.
Exactly. Like history is the story of cause and effect, but not in a black and white sense. A lot of stuff, little things needs to happen for an event to actually take place. You know, World War II didn't just start with the Germany invasion. It didn't just start with that. There were many different things that had to happen for that. but for Germany to even be able to invade. The same thing with Japan. Like a lot of stuff needs to happen for them to get to this point, you know. So it's important to understand that. It's important to understand that the truth is so complicated, clear, but so complicated. So we always got to have an open mind with stuff like this. Everything's never set on stone. New information is always found. So I hate when niggas be like it's black and white. It's this or it's not that, and I don't agree with that at all, to be honest.
No event takes place for a singular reason, especially one as messy as this.
Yeah.
So if I had to say why the Japanese surrendered in 1945, I think the Allies had something to do with it.
That was it. Why Japan surrendered. Great video. Love the content. This is by Potential History, so go give the guy a view and a follow. Amazing video with great information. So yeah, what do you guys think? What was the main reason Japan surrendered, or what was your opinion? Anything you have? Please comment, subscribe. If you haven't done that by now, you a bitch ass nigga. If you still watching the end of the video, why don't you just get some pussy, bro? Lame ass nigga watching the whole video. Fucking nerd ass nigga. But I really appreciate every view I get. Thank you guys. Have a nice day.
In May 1940, Nazi Germany attacks in the West.
State, historical events are generally allowed to monetize if presented within the context of a documentary or historical debate. This video is very clearly about history and derived from a lecture I delivered in a college classroom, because this is a very important subject for American history. If that doesn't fit their advertiser guidelines for educational content, then they don't know what education means. So since YouTube won't support this kind of content, please consider buying some merch or donating to my Patreon, all of which are linked in the description. Since YouTube not only doesn't support education, but is blatantly willing to violate their own advertiser-friendly guidelines. Hey, Cypher here. I've talked a lot about the Lost Cause myth on this channel, mostly to denigrate it. After all, today, those who believe in it are nothing more than conspiracy theorists, and are merely spouting it off as a form of hatred. But here's the thing. It didn't start off as a hateful ideology, and has played an integral role in US history. Just as it is important to understand the origins of the Ku Klux Klan,